Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing another segment of Coffee Date Thursday, and today's prompt is looking back, and it is things I never thought I'd live to tell. Things I never thought I'd live through to tell. So today I decided with that prompt that I was going to talk about my labor and delivery with my son Mason, who is now 4. I haven't spoke about his labor and delivery on social media really. It was pretty traumatizing and it's quite a long story, but I figured that that is the #1 thing that I wanted to talk about for this prompt. As soon as I heard the prompt, I was like, yep, I'm going to talk about my labor and delivery with Mason, because honestly, I did not know if I was going to live or if I was going to make it or what was going to happen, because it was just so scary. So I do apologize ahead of time. This video is probably going to be pretty long because there's a lot of details. And just an FYI, this is the story from my eyes. I was the one who lived it, and a lot of things happened, so everything's probably not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try to relive the memory as best I can for you guys so that you guys can kind of get a feel of what happened that day. So I was pregnant with Mason, and it was January of 2012. My due date was the 21st, and I believe it was the 18th or the 19th of January when I went in for an appointment with my midwife, and she said, well, why don't we send you over to the hospital and we will try to start some Pitocin with you and see if we can start to induce you. Now, they induced me a couple days before my due date because my daughter, who I had 6 years prior to that, was born 10 days overdue, and she had swallowed meconium inside of me, and she ended up getting meconium aspiration, which caused pneumonia, and she was in the hospital for 9 days after her birth. So they kind of wanted to stay away from that, so they figured that they would go ahead and try to induce me, you know, right around my due date, just to kind of be sure that the same problem didn't arise with this pregnancy. So yes, so they tried to induce me on the 18th, which was a Wednesday, so that's correct. Okay, so they tried to induce me on that day, and I went right over after, like I said, after my OB appointment. I went over and they started me on Pitocin, and I stayed there for a good 6 to 8 hours with the Pitocin drip, trying to get everything started, and my labor just was not starting. I wasn't getting any contractions. No contractions were showing on the monitor, and I wasn't dilating at all any more than what I already was, which was between 2 and 3 centimeters. So they discharged me and sent me home, and they said, well, I guess he's not ready. What we'll do is we will try to induce you again next week. So that leads us to January 19th. No, that leads us to January 26th. And I had it all set up to be induced on that day. Again, I was going to go into the hospital and around 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was going to start another round of Pitocin and try to get everything going. So I went in, my mom brought me at 6 in the morning. We got there, they got me all admitted, they got me into the room, and they started me on Pitocin. Now, the same exact thing happened with the Pitocin. The Pitocin, my body just was not taking to the Pitocin, and it was not starting my labor. So they did that, let's see, that was the 19th, it was on a Thursday. They tried the Pitocin for a good 16 hours before they were finally like, well, you know, it's obviously not working, let's try something else. So the next day, well, evening and into the next day, they started me on Cervidil, and I'm pretty sure the Cervidil was something that they had to put like on my cervix, and they keep it there, and it's supposed to like ripen your cervix, and it's supposed to make you go into labor. Well, That also didn't work. So now we are on to Friday. So Friday, they're still trying the Cervidil, and that wasn't working. So they tried me on Cytotec. And Cytotec, it was this little teeny pill, and they put that into my cervix. Sorry, this is probably a TMI part, but they put the pill in my cervix and then it just dissolves, and that was supposed to also put me into labor. So now we are on you know, Friday, the afternoon, evening into Friday, and they're trying me on this third medication. So the whole time I am just getting so frustrated. I'm overdue at this point. I wanted my son to be born, and I just didn't understand why my body was not taking to the medication. So that leads us to Friday night. Now at Friday night, they kept giving me the Cytotec, and at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday night, so it would technically be into Saturday morning, my water broke. So I was like, okay, awesome, like something's happening, you know, my water broke, and usually once your water breaks, you start to have contractions and it kickstarts your labor. So I was pretty excited about that. So I called the nurse in. I had the nurse come in. They checked with this little strip to make sure that it was my water, and it was. So my water broke and I felt nothing. No contractions, nothing. This whole time through all of this, I had no contractions. My cervix wasn't dilating, and everything was just kind of at a standstill. So my mom stayed with me the whole time throughout the whole thing, and she's like, well, why don't you try to get some rest? You know, the worst that's gonna happen is you're not gonna start your labor within 24 hours after breaking your water, and they're gonna have to rush you in for a C-section. So I was like, okay, you know, you're right. So I went to bed. And so this is Friday night or Saturday morning at 3 in the morning. I went to bed. I go all day Saturday. Nothing happened. And at this point I was like, what is going on? Like, I just wanted a C-section at that point. I was like, just put me in for a C-section. I want my baby to come out. You know, obviously something is wrong. Like, I didn't feel right about the whole situation. So my midwife comes in, and she talks to me, and she's like, you know, no, we're not gonna put you through for a C-section, because, you know, that is a surgery and your body is made to have kids. You will do this. Your body will figure it out. It's just taking a little extra time. And once your body does its job, you will successfully give birth to this child. Like, you've already had one child naturally, you know, you'll be fine. So I was like, okay, you know, she told me the pros and the cons of a C-section, and at that point I was like, okay, well, let's just see if my body's going to do its job. So my midwife, I can't remember where she went. She had like a game or something for one of her children, so she ended up having to leave the hospital. Well, then at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, after all day Saturday nothing happened, and it was creeping up on the 24 hours of my water breaking, I started to get my first contraction, and it was like a really good contraction, my first one, and I was like, okay, like, this is starting. So they called my midwife in, and she came in, and it was about 10 o'clock when she got there, and she checked me, and I believe I was at like 6 centimeters. I was like progressing really fast, and she's like, oh, you know, thank God. Like, I was getting really nervous that I was gonna have to have you go in for a C-section, where it has been almost 24 hours since your water broke. So I was excited. We, you know, went through all the labor stuff, you know, the breathing, and I was sitting on the ball and bouncing and trying to get my pains to go away. And we had a labor plan, and I had said that if my pain did get kind of unbearable, that I wanted to get an intrathecal, which an intrathecal is, it's called a walking epidural, and you're able to still move your legs, but your stomach is just numb. So at this point, it was probably a couple hours after my first contraction, probably 11 o'clock, 11:30. I was like, you know, okay, I'm ready for the intrathecal. I didn't want to get any pain medicine. I just wanted the intrathecal. So my midwife called the anesthesiologist, and they came in, they gave me my intrathecal, and instantly I was like, whew, like, all my pain was gone. The only thing that I could feel was like the pressure that I had to push. So that pressure just kept staying there, and I was around like 8 or 9 centimeters after my intrathecal. And then around 1 o'clock, she said that I was at 10 centimeters. So I was like, you know, good, because I felt the pressure. I could feel that, you know, I was ready to push. So once I was at 10 centimeters, I started pushing. I pushed him out. It was probably about 20 minutes, so it was pretty quick. I pushed him out, and once I got his head out, she had told me that she said, Brittany, you need to stop pushing. And for most of you who have had children, you know how hard it is to stop pushing once your child's head is out and the shoulders and the rest of the body is inside. It is practically impossible. So all I remember hearing was Dale, my children's dad, saying, oh my God, why is that wrapped around his neck like that? And the midwife and my mother and my cousin Amber were all like, shh. And they were like, you know, pretty much telling him to be quiet because they were trying to prevent me from getting upset and nervous and continuing to push him out while she was trying to cut the cord from around his neck. So she ended up getting the cord cut, and he, you know, I ended up pushing him the rest of the way out. Now I had... Also, with this labor, I had marginal cord insertion, and that is when because your cord is in your placenta is like this, and your cord is supposed to be here. So, you know, when you deliver your cord, they can help you to pull it out. Well, my cord was inserted at like the bottom or at the top. It wasn't inserted in the middle where it was supposed to be. So that was another thing that they were worried about, was after I delivered my son that I needed to pretty much deliver my placenta on its own. I was not able to have any help delivering it. They weren't allowed to tug on it or anything because they were worried that, you know, it would split and some of my placenta would be left up inside of me. So let me tell you, that was not fun. Trying to deliver a placenta after you've just had a baby and having no help at all, it was not very fun. And so I delivered my placenta, you know, they gave me the baby, and within like 5 minutes, I felt this gush, and I started hemorrhaging really bad. Like, I had severe postpartum hemorrhaging. Now, if the midwife and I or anybody else would have been thinking properly, they should have known that my body was not taking to the Pitocin. So my body was having an issue processing the oxytocin. And after you have a baby, your body needs to produce oxytocin, and your body needs to react to oxytocin to close everything back up. And you're supposed to have, you know, mild contractions afterwards to, you know, close everything back up. Well, my body was not taking to the oxytocin, which we already know. They tried me on it for a while and it didn't do anything. So where my body was not taking to it, my body was not allowing itself to close back up. So what happened was I just was hemorrhaging. And I mean, when I say hemorrhaging, it was really bad. Like, it was, this is probably TMI again, but it was like blood on the floor. I mean, really bad. So when that happened, my mom was really nervous, and I could see that her face turned completely white, and she ended up like running down the hallway, which I have no clue why, but anyways, she ran down the hallway. She was so scared, and my cousin Amber had to go out and get her, and she was like, Joanne, you know, she really needs you in there. So my mom came back, and I just looked at my mom, and my mom's face was like completely ghost white, and I was like, Mom, am I gonna die? Like, am I gonna be okay? You know, what's going on? And she was like, everything's fine. You know, she stood right there, but I could see like she was crying, and I was just so nervous. And all I hear is the midwives calling for supervisors and this person and that person, and they were getting all these people to come in, and they were, you know, inserting pills into me and pumping me full of IV Pitocin and a bunch of other things. And my midwife literally had to take her hand and put it inside me and clamp my cervix shut because it was not closing. So she ended up doing that. She held it for a while. She got the bleeding to stop. And the whole time this was happening, like I was so nervous. You know, I just kept asking the midwife, like, am I gonna be okay? Like, am I going to die? And she just wouldn't answer my question. Like, she was beating around the bush, like, you know, we're doing everything we can, Brittany, just relax, you know, da 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 da. And it's like, when you're in that situation, you just want somebody to say, you're gonna be okay. Like, you're not gonna die. You're gonna be okay. But obviously, they can't tell you that. I mean, that's the first thing in healthcare that you learn, is that you cannot make promises that you don't know if you're going to be able to keep. So for me as a patient, I just wanted the clarification that I was going to live, but for them, you know, they couldn't do it. So it is what it is. That's just how it is. So she was clamping my uterus cervix shut, and making it so that the blood was, you know, that the blood stopped flowing. And, you know, all these people were rushing in, and I had just been through labor, so I was exhausted, plus all the blood loss. Like, I'm sure some of you have lost a lot of blood at some point, and it just totally drains you, like, totally completely drains you. So I'm, you know, trying to pay attention to everything that's going on. You know, at the same time, I'm having like a mega panic attack, thinking that I'm going to die or something is going to happen to me, and, you know, all of that. So it was just a really scary moment in my life, and I really honestly did not know if I was going to live or not. And, you know, the whole time, like, I had a little newborn baby, you know, 8-pound, 3-ounce baby sitting there, and I couldn't even hold him. I couldn't do anything. I was just laying there wondering, like, if I was going to live to see him, you know, the next day. So she ended up getting the bleeding to stop, and, you know, we thought that, like, I was closing back up and everything was going good. So she ended up, you know, I can't exactly remember what she did, but she ended up getting it to close back up, and then, you know, everything was fine. I got to hold my baby. I got to try to, you know, breastfeed him. We got to spend time with him, and then I can remember feeling like I was passing a big blood clot, and then I could feel, you know, a gush of blood, and I was hemorrhaging again. So the midwife came back in, and at this point she had to put like a balloon type thing. She had to insert it inside of me to kind of stop my blood flow, and I don't exactly know or remember what it did, but she pretty much explained it to me like a catheter. It goes in, and then they insert, you know, fluid, and then it stays in there and it stops the bleeding. So she ended up putting that inside of me after I passed more blood and a blood clot, and that ended up getting the bleeding under control. So they start taking labs and all kinds of stuff from me, and they figured out that I needed a transfusion. So they come in with all these papers that I need to sign, stating that I realize that, you know, they test for HIV and hepatitis and all these other bloodborne illnesses, but they can't guarantee 100% that those illnesses are not contaminated in the blood that I'm about to receive into my body, and, you know, explaining the risks to me, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, you know, oh my goodness, like, really? So what am I gonna do? I had to do it. So I not only had to get one blood transfusion, but I had to get 2 blood transfusions, and then I also had to be on this thing called Venifer, I believe it's called, and it is like liquid iron, and it is like black, and it's iron straight into an IV. So the second time they got it under control, and finally it was under control where I was at a normal blood flow, and I was not hemorrhaging anymore, and then I got the 2 blood transfusions, and then had the liquid iron going into an IV, and on top of that, while all that's happening, I start like seeing spots in my eyes, which some of you know I suffer from optical migraines, so my eyes will start to like go blurry, and then my eyes will go blurry for like a half an hour, and then a huge migraine will come on. So that started happening like in the middle of all of this. So they bring me in Benadryl, and they gave me Benadryl, which actually stopped the migraine, which I was really shocked because I had been battling with them for years and I've never tried Benadryl and didn't even know that it would help. So they did give me Benadryl, that stopped it, but the Benadryl made me even more tired on top of having a baby, having lost so much blood. I was just completely drained. So once everything calmed down and I stopped bleeding, you know, they gave me a catheter because I was so weak I wasn't even able to get out of the bed. So I wasn't able to get out of the bed. The midwife actually grabbed my son and brought him over to me as I was like laying there, like, you know, pretty much passed out, and she latched him onto my breast and got him latched on perfectly so that he could actually nurse, which I thought that was really nice, and we have some pictures of it. My mom sent up some pictures, so I thought that was really cool that she did that, because the hospital that I was at is like all for breastfeeding, and they knew how bad I wanted to breastfeed, and obviously it had been a few hours since my son had been born, so I got to kind of breastfeed him as I was in and out of sleeping. And you know, everything worked out good. Like, I seriously was so blessed that I had the midwife that I had, and that she was able to act so quickly and, you know, get everything taken care of so that my hemorrhaging stopped. And she was great with my son. You know, I thought it was awesome that she helped me breastfeed even while I was going through all of that. And she was just, I couldn't have been happier with how everything played out. I definitely feel like somebody was looking over me, and, you know, I'm just so blessed that it ended the way that it did, and that I'm still here, and that my family didn't have to carry on, you know, without me there, because I couldn't imagine. So that was really traumatizing. And then after all that happened, I ended up staying in the hospital. I stayed in the hospital for a while, and I had to seriously like learn how to walk again. I mean, not learn, but I had to like practice walking, like take 10 steps and then sit, and then, you know, take 20 steps and then sit, and then, you know, I had to take a shower and see if I could stand up long enough in the shower, and I had to do all these things kind of to like rehabilitate myself and get my energy level back before I was allowed to go home. So it was just really, really traumatizing. And, you know, after a while, I ended up regaining my energy, and I had to be on iron for like 6 months afterwards, and I had to take it every day, and they checked my iron levels frequently just to make sure, you know, that everything was going back to normal. So it was a long road, but everything worked out great, and my son was healthy and happy, and that is the most that anybody can ask for, you know, through a labor and delivery. But yeah, so that's pretty much my labor and delivery story with Mason, and it wasn't perfect, but I'm alive, he's healthy, he's alive, everybody's here, and that's all that we can thank God for. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I know that it is kind of gory and gruesome and probably too much information, and I hope that it's just moms watching this, because I know that there are some weirdos out there that like to watch these videos, but hopefully it's just moms watching. So but yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. If you guys have had any experience like that, leave a comment down below. I can remember when I was pregnant, when I first got pregnant with him, like I just had this really big urge that something was gonna happen. It was like my daughter was 6, and I just couldn't imagine having another child, and so I felt like that something bad was gonna happen. I felt like either my son was going to you know, something was going to happen to my son after he was born, or I was going to miscarry, or that I was going to, you know, pass away during labor. I just had a big feeling that something like that was going to happen, and it's so weird that it almost did. But that's pretty much it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And like I said, leave questions, comments if this has happened to you. Let me know your story down below. I would love to find more people that this has happened to and see if your experience is the same. And let me know if you think that there's something that they could have done differently or should have done differently or whatever. I would love to hear from you guys. All right, have a nice day. Bye.